Right. Speaking of young people, we have to get into this story that we covered last week. Callers, hang on. We have to get into this story. Uh, all over the nation, there has been once again, you know, the attention paid to the city of Gary for something negative. And last week, a young child, 3 years old, was shot 3 times in the Dunes Court Apartments, which is, right down, really not that far from where I am right here in the studio. And everybody was outraged about it, but there is actually more information coming out about this shooting. A Gary man is suspected of shooting this 3-year-old baby, basically, because he is basically a baby, 3 times. And he was also, what we're finding out now, he was charged Thursday in a connection with the previous shooting that wounded the child's 13-year-old uncle in 2019.
Wait a minute.
This man can't stop shooting children. Now,
and they're all in the same family.
They are all in the same. This man, I don't want to say his name. He's 25 years old. He lived with the 3-year-old, the child's mother, and the child's teen uncle. So they have, I don't even know exactly what's happened to the mother of the child teen uncle, who apparently who's probably the mother of this child who was shot. Wow. And they all lived at this apartment on the 1700 block of East 7th, where the child was shot. The teen child was shot.
Okay, wait a minute.
Yes.
It just hit me. So the child's mother.
Yes.
And the child's uncle.
Yes.
That means the mother and the other victim are brother and sister.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
they're brother and sister. And what's the connection of this guy?
Either her boyfriend. I'm guessing this is her man, because, well, actually it says he's her boyfriend. Her boyfriend lives with her brother, and her child. And he shot her brother, who is now 15. At the time, he was 13, in the arm and the groin in 2019. Now, this teen, who is now 15 years old, told the police that he initially gave them a false narrative about the 2019 shooting because he thought that this man shot him by accident.
Mm-hmm.
Now, no charges have been filed yet in the 3-year-old child's shooting, which happened at 2:45 in the morning on Wednesday. Online court records show that he was wanted Friday on an arrest warrant and has not entered a plea. Now, the child's mother told the police that this man called her while she was at work and said that her 3-year-old had been shot and repeatedly said he was sorry. This man then picked this woman up from her job, and they called 911 when they returned home. The kid could have bled out by that point.
Yeah.
So he picks her up from her work, and they wait till they come home to call 911. This 3-year-old who suffered 3 gunshot wounds is definitely said. He told the investigators, and this is heartbreaking, right? Because children don't know better, folks. They are children. These are our babies. These are the people that we are put here as adults to take care of. He said that this man shot him, but that he was being good.
Wow.
So this kid thinks that he somehow is to blame for this.
Wow.
And now, after the 3-year-old was shot, the teen uncle, who is now 15, was 13 when he was shot by this same man.
That's 2 years ago.
Yep. Now, this teen uncle has begun to suspect that this man intentionally shot him in 2019.
Wow.
The teen said that he recalled arguing with this man in early December 2019 because this man was yelling at this nephew. At his nephew, who was at the baby, who was then 1 year old. 1 year old.
Okay, that tells me something else.
Right, and about a week later,
those are not his kids.
Apparently not. A week later, this man asked the teen if he wanted to shoot a gun. This teen said yes. Because how many? I mean, look, I don't care what color you are, I don't care where you live. If an older man in his 20s and you're a teenage boy and you want to seem like you're coming into your own as a man as well,
Yeah.
most of the time a young man is gonna say, "Yeah, cool, that's cool," because kids want to be cool, kids want to be a part of something, and older men have an obligation to teach younger men the right way. And instead, this guy teaching this said he's going to take this kid out who's 13 years old at this time. This man had to be 23 at this time. He takes him out to a wooden area where this man allowed the boy to shoot the handgun 4 times.
Yeah.
This young man who's 13 hands the gun back to this man who fired it 4 more times, shooting the teen in the arm and the groin. The teen, now at this point, the teen, who was 13 years old at this time, ran all the way home and laid by a vehicle while this man told his sister, who was his girlfriend, that he had been shot. The sister of the teen and the mother of the child who's been shot took this young man to the hospital. This was in 2019.
Yeah.
This boy has admitted that he initially told the police that someone in a vehicle on 7th Avenue shot him, and that shot at him and this man because this man was dating his sister, and he thought that because this was his sister's boyfriend that he couldn't have shot him on purpose.
Right.
Now,
but wait a minute.
Yeah.
Why did he tell the police that?
Well,
that they were doing target practice, and
well, I guess
why
yeah.
create this narrative, one, that reinforces the image of Gary as this wild fire zone. Why present that narrative? Who put it in his head to tell that story?
Well, like the way I'm reading it is this young man who was 13 at the time looks up to this older man because that's what young boys do. We look up to older men when we're in that age. I remember, I looked up to guys who were 8, 9, 10 years older than me too. I used to play basketball right here on 5th Avenue at Edgewater, at the Edgewater facility every Saturday. Me and my friends would go there, and there's a mixture of guys who were my age at the time, who were young teenagers and little kids, and there were a lot of older guys in their 20s and 30s who were coming out to play, and I remember a lot of them. I used to, look up to a lot of them too, and if they were joking about something, I wanted to be in on the joke. If they were talking about girls, I wanted to be in it too. Like that's what you do when you're a young man. This young boy wanted to impress this older man by keeping his mouth shut. And so he invented this narrative when he got shot that somebody else had done it because he thought this cool older guy who let me shoot a gun is dating my sister. And so he couldn't have shot me on purpose. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that to my sister.
But wait a minute. Why not say that? Why not say it was an accident? Why say that somebody drove by us and shot at us?
Oh, because the older guy would get in trouble. He'd get in trouble either way.
I mean, the most that would happen would be, which is what did happen. He's charged with neglect of a dependent, resulting in bodily injury. Now, that's the most it would. He would have been charged with attempted murder.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
He wouldn't have been. If the boy would have said that, we were doing target practice, and I gave the gun back to him, and I didn't. I didn't know to take the round out of the chamber before I gave it to him. I just handed it back to him, and in the process of me handing it to him, the gun went off.
Right.
He could have said that. There's any number of things he could have said that would have been in the realm of the truth rather than a flat out lie.
Right. And so now that this second shooting has happened, this teen has reconsidered maybe he was shot on purpose. And this man did eventually admit that he shot the teen, but he did say, like you said, that it was an accident. He was charged with neglect of a dependent resulting in serious bodily injury, a level 3 felony, along with felony counts of battery by means of a deadly weapon and criminal recklessness, and a misdemeanor count of carrying a handgun without a license. So that gun wasn't licensed. That's probably why. That's a big part of the reason why he lied, because he wasn't supposed to have that gun.
So okay, that would explain to me why the the gentleman who had originally possessed the gun. I can understand why he would lie.
Right.
Although, and I'm going to say in defense of this young man that as far as we know at this point, he doesn't have any other interactions with law enforcement. At least the reports that we have so far do not say that this man has had a pattern for of criminal activity. So maybe these are the only two incidents that have happened. They are 2 years apart. Maybe accidents happen the first time. Of course, we still have to understand why would you have been shooting a gun in front of a 3-year-old?
Right.
At the very least, if what happened 2 years ago was an accident, shouldn't that make you more cautious?
Right.
When you're dealing with firearms. And I don't want to throw the mother.
Oh, we're going to get into the mother. We're definitely going to. We're going to get into the mother.
There's a lot of bad decision making going on here in this family.
Yes, let me get to this call real quick. Before we get into the mom, let me get to because these callers have been very good. They've waited for a long time. Hello, caller.
Hey, Pastor. I have to go back and tell you this. A lot of people are not gravitating away from the church. They're gravitating away from a lot of these pastors. You brought up 100 years ago versus today. 100 years ago, there was not a church on every corner. 100 years ago, people didn't become a pastor to drive $300,000 Ferraris and wear the best of clothes. It went into a lot of black communities, and I would never put you in this category because I listen to you talk. I've met you before and don't even know I met you. But I would never put you in the category of people that call themselves pastors for the money, for the fame, because they want to say, hey, my name is on a church. If you look into a lot of black communities, we got churches on every corner. If a store closed down, we open up a church. If two people in a church have a disagreement, the other person, he goes get his license and he opens up a church. And a lot of these churches ain't got 5 members because the only members in the church is the family. And we have seen, and I'm not just saying the black community, but in all communities of all races, where a lot of these pastors have been caught in the wrong. They're men just like anybody else. But people look at pastors above, I'm going to be honest, above God to me. Because you will get people that won't read the Bible, but listen what the pastor say. One thing I love about my pastor, and I still work with him, Pastor Victor Davis. He was a pastor of Spirit of God Fellowship. He's now in Las Vegas, but I get in contact with him.
How is he doing?
He's doing great. He's doing great. Him and Sister Faith is doing great.
Fantastic. I used to live in Las Vegas a long time.
Okay, even my pastor at the church now, Mr. James Middleton. I try to keep in contact with them as much as possible. But one thing they taught us is we are men just like you. We had an associate pastor at the church, Mr. Vernon Smith. He passed. He was my wife's godfather. He was a pastor. He was an assistant pastor at the church and had a facility in Gary called a Lighthouse of Hope, along with Pastor Ben Berry.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing about the pastors that I loved at that church, they kept it real. They didn't walk around like, hey, I'm high and mighty. I'm going to let you know that there are skeletons in my closet and things I did wrong before I decided to walk this straight and narrow.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is, Pastor, I look at you and I look at a lot of other pastors as men of God. But I look at some pastors and I look at them as men of jokes.
Ouch.
Because we have seen here in Gary, even before I moved, there was 2 pastors. I'm not going to give a name, but look it up if you want to see it. It's on YouTube. These 2 pastors were caught on tape saying that they can get these people all the votes they want. Just give me a bucket of chicken. And this guy was telling them, do you know what I'm talking about?
Okay.
A bucket of chicken.
Well, look.
Can I finish real quick? Can I finish real quick?
Yeah, could you make it real quick?
Okay. These 2 pastors right here in Gary, and they were caught on tape selling votes, saying that the people in my congregation will vote for whoever I want to say. And it all boils down to the pastors telling this guy, don't pay me a check, give me cash. So when people see that, they will gravitate away from a lot of the pastors, but they won't gravitate away from God. And I'm glad, Pastor, that you are one of those pastors that people can look to and say, hey, I don't have a Lamborghini in the driveway. I don't have a Lexus in the driveway. I'm a man of God. I work a job. I own my house and everything. But you got a lot of pastors out here in all races that all they in for it is the money. Y'all have a good night.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, caller. Hello, caller.
Good evening. Good evening.
Yes.
Yes, just wanted a piece of the conversation, and you know about the shooting, the man
Yes.
that did the shooting. That it's easy to feel what happened there. What is a 13-year-old gonna? If he just gonna, like he been in the street and just already ready to got thoughts already in place and tell the police, somebody drove by in a car, they were shooting at me and him, and they hit me a few times. Now, what is the chance of a 13-year-old thinking that up, like, after being shot? That's like this, right. So your mind. So if somebody done shot and you found out later with a gun, and then I just automatically assume that this 23-year-old, how did you get the aiming the gun in the direction of the boy and shoot him that many times? How did you get the aiming the gun in the direction of that baby? Why did that young man say somebody drove by and shoot? This 23-year, I mean, it goes without saying. You know, the 23-year-old coached him into that.
Yes.
That's not even an answer. That's just simply put. So when you see things like that, I mean, and the young man thinking back on it, looking back on it at this time, seeing, hey, this man was aiming his gun. You know, things clear up as you come out of the shock of the moment. So he came out of the shock of the moment, and we've been thinking about it. Why was this man still aiming his gun at me and pulling the trigger more than one time, aiming at me? Why was he pulling the trigger more than one time, aiming in the direction of the baby? So, the thing is, and the young boy, he lied because, and he was under the impression, his imagination just couldn't believe somebody was trying to kill him. Right. I mean, maybe he wasn't. Maybe he's just one of those crazy people that like to shoot people. And you do have them. Mm-hmm. But at any rate, the young man, I think he can be convincing enough to let them know how confused he was, and then add that on to the fact that this man had been having his gun, and I lied for him the first time. I was 13. He told me exactly what to say. Mm-hmm. I thought I was doing good, hanging with somebody that I could, look up to or whatever, and shooting guns with him. So I'm kind of like I'm on the way to growing up or hanging around somebody I can learn from. But instead, you had that turnout, and this child got old enough to kind of look back at that and see clearly now that this is a maniac.
Right.
Okay, I'm really enjoying. Just one last thing, and I'm really gonna keep it light about the churches and how many churches there are, and you do have people who can keep up with all of the faults of the church, but they'll tell you from time to time, every once in a while, the number of churches that got true God followers. They don't have a long list. They seem like they just gather and collect all ill information instead of telling you this is how you should seek out the pastors and preachers. But they just give you the downside of it. So they're trying to drive you away. And, too many churches and everything. But, I look at the too many churches, and I'm still going to keep it short, even though I know I'm pushing it. But I look at, you see all the churches all over America, all in all countrysides, all the buildings. And it didn't take one possessed or obsessed person putting up all of these churches. There was a spirit that was going on in America. And the spirit was the hand of God putting churches everywhere. That same spiritual hand put Bibles in every motel room that I used to go to. I'm like, ain't no one obsessed person doing this, making man's salvation just so readily available. And say in your prayers in school, but and all of these things created a closer community because you had to do the godly thing because you're going to need some sugar from your neighbor down the street or some coffee or some beans or some rice. And it depended on your very survival. There was no welfare. Your very survival depended on you being raised right enough so that you could go to a neighbor instead of a neighbor saying, they're a bunch of lowlives and this and that. But you had to. Okay, thank you, man. Thank you. I knew I wasn't sure, man.
It's all good.
I love you. Yeah.
It's all good.
Thank you, bro.
But we were about to talk about. I know you wanted to get into the mother, Rev. What did you want to say about the decision-making process of the mother in this particular case?
Just that you got a bunch of young people together. The assailant is now 25. I don't recall how old the mother was. I don't know what the east side of Gary was like over the past 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was that kind of neighborhood where drive-bys were common, and so it wasn't hard to come up with the story, or whether he had to be coached by somebody. But it just seems to me that if my brother had gotten shot, and I knew for a fact that it wasn't actually a drive-by, because within that 2 years, the truth got told by somebody.
Right.
And yet, they were still together.
Yeah,
She still gravitated towards that guy.
I have to wonder about that as well. But I think another part of this story that I think hasn't been talked about is this is the 25th anniversary of welfare reform in this country, where Bill Clinton back in 1996, we're going to get into the 25th anniversary of another one of Bill Clinton's god-awful policies as well later on, but welfare reform, where in the 90s, you had a lot of right-wing Republican politicians, and unfortunately, you had a lot of liberal Democrat politicians who followed with them on this narrative that these black women were just sitting at home, popping out babies, not paying for them, and society is just, subsidizing the lifestyle of these welfare queens and Cadillacs. That narrative started by Ronald Reagan in 1980. And so Bill Clinton ended welfare as we know it. That's what he said. Those were his words. We're going to end welfare as we know it, forcing a lot of these women in poor communities to go out to work and leave their kids with all kinds of, ominous, malevolent, sketchy, call them what you want, figures. And I remember a great documentary, Michael Moore's Bowling for Columbine. He showed the scenario that's very similar to this one in the sense that it was about a young black woman who, thanks to welfare reform and the dissolution of welfare programs, this woman was forced to get on a bus and go to work hours away from her home in Detroit in the suburbs so she could work to feed her kids. And so she would leave her kids at home with, I think it was her boyfriend, if I'm not mistaken. This is, I believe it was her boyfriend too. Now, while she was away at work, her elementary age son somehow found the gun of her boyfriend, took this gun to school, and shot one of his classmates. Now, this was a story, I believe, in the late 90s or early 21st century. But this is sort of the legacy of those sort of welfare to work programs where, unlike a lot of the other wealthier countries in the world, we say in America, there is nothing more important than forcing people to go out to work and get a job. There's nothing more important than that. And so a lot of these mothers are leaving their kids with all kinds of sketchy people because no longer do we have a social safety net that will help them out and help them take care of these kids. So this woman had to be out at 2:45 in the morning. That woman should be at home with her kids. And people are going to judge her decision. Oh, she shouldn't have had kids. Once the kids are here, we have two options. We either
it's kind of too late to talk about what coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Exactly. And let me just say this: these are the same conservatives who want to limit, abortion and birth control and other things as well. So these people don't want birth control. They don't want condoms and everything. And then when these kids are born, they say, well, no, you take your behind out and go on work. These women go leave their kids with some sketchy characters, and they end up like this.
Well, let me ask you this, though. There is a bigger issue at play here, and it's the issue of the family.
Yes.
In the way humans are designed, we are not designed to just plant babies all willy-nilly all over the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We're not designed to be like chickens. Okay? We're supposed to form family units.
Right.
Men and women are supposed to come together, form families for the long haul. The whole what women today want to call patriarchy.
Right.
The whole notion that, for example, what lies behind the idea that men get paid more money than women? Well, part of it, what lies behind it, was as the economic system was originally designed, the wife was not intended to have to go work.
Right.
In fact, prior to laws being passed in this country where the wife's salary had to be included in credit applications, housing costs were based upon one person in the household being the income provider.
Right.
Not two people.
Right.
And houses, the price of housing was within reach of one person working.
Right.
And the other person was able to stay home and raise the children.
Right.
They changed the money pool, and the price of housing went up.
Right. And we also changed the minimum wage and wages, which reached their peak in the early 70s. If the minimum wage had kept pace with inflation and productivity from the 1960s, it'd be $25 an hour right now. And so.
But getting back to the issue of family.
Right.
Once you break down the family, once you say that creating whole, sound family structures is important,
that when you grow up, there are two things you need to do. Make sure that you are able to provide for yourself, and make sure that you create a stable family unit, just like your parents created for you.
Right.
You do the same thing. But we lost that.
Yep.
We lost that in the 60s because, the fact is, prior to the 60s, even in the aftermath of slavery, for over 100 years, we had strong family structures. Even under Jim Crow, we had strong family structures. After the 60s, that left.
Yep.
That was broken down. We were told that fathers didn't matter. We were told that it's more important that a woman be able to go out and get a job than that she recognized a good man and was drawn to a good man as opposed to a man who lacked character.
Right.
Yeah. One of the jobs of the church during that time was to make sure that young men developed character.
Right.
Especially in the black community, but even in the general American public. The teaching of the Ten Commandments, among other things, was so that you would develop character.
Yes. Yes.
We threw that out. So now here we have 2019, 2021, a young lady with a child and a younger brother who she is responsible for some reason. We don't know the whole story there. Where is her mother? Why is this boy living with her rather than with her mother? Maybe she's dead. That does happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's as common in today's society for that young lady's mother to be a young lady too.
Yep.
And either be laid waste by drugs or something else. And so this young lady has to take her younger brother in.
Right. We have to go to a commercial break. We will be right back right after this on Issues and Answers on WLTH 1370 AM. Give us a call, 219-885-1371. We'll be right back after this.